Oh, my glasses have just broken. Right. Welcome to this meeting of the Connected Community Scrutiny Committee being held on Tuesday, the 7th of July, 2026. For those present in the meeting room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public present who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please raise your hand now so that any such person filming or photographing may be made aware. For participants in the room, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to contribute. When invited to speak, please press the button on the right of the microphone unit and speak directly towards the microphone. Please remember to turn your microphone off once you finish speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones, laptops and other devices are turned to silent. For remote participants in attendance, can I ask that you use the raise hand feature within the system if you wish to contribute and to introduce yourself when called upon. We'll keep an eye open for you, Frank, just in case you want to contribute. So,
thank you.
Please note that only committee members present in the meeting room may vote. Apologies for absence have been received from committee members Councillor Roger Phillips and Councillor Helen Heathfield. Councillor Frank Cornthwaite isn't present in person, but is in attendance remotely. Therefore, he can participate at my discretion, but he cannot vote. Named subs, Councillor Richard Thomas is present as the name substitute for Councillor Roger Phillips, and Councillor Justine Peabody is present as the name substitute for Councillor Helen Heathfield. Declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare any interests in any agenda item this afternoon? No, thank you. Minutes. The minutes document of the meeting held on 15th April 2026 is included in the agenda at pages 13 to 24. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Are you content that I sign the minutes as an accurate record? Yep. Great. All those in favour? Thank you. Yep. All the people that were in attendance, that's great. So we'll sign them at the end, that's fine. Right, questions from members of the public. The committee has received 4 questions from members of the public, and responses to the questions have been published in Supplement 2 of the agenda. The questioner has the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or to join the meeting to ask their supplementary question. Supplementary questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. Can I ask the clerk to confirm if any supplementary questions are to be asked?
Thank you, Chair. One supplementary question has been received from a member of the public. The supplementary question received from Ms. Seekings will be read out by myself, and I will share on screen Ms. Seekings' supplementary question and read it out shortly. Okay. Thank you for your response. With £1.8 million already spent on the library project, years to go before a library might open in the Shire Hall, and the remainder of that building having no defined purpose, will the committee review and scrutinise what a library and learning resource centre should be for residents, how it will be maintained and can create a stronger town, and what should be done and with what budget with the rest of the Shire Hall building, including the main hall, which they continue to be responsible for and which should be part of Herefordshire's cultural strategy?
Thank you very much, Ms. Seekings, for that supplementary question. We're obviously highly likely to discuss the decision to locate the library in Shire Hall, Courtroom 2, as part of our broader scrutiny work, as part of the broader work to redevelop the Shire Hall. We can't commit precisely to the lines of inquiry that are going to be followed this afternoon, but as I say, it's highly likely that we will touch on that over the course of the next couple of hours. Okay, the questions from members of the council. This committee has not received any members from questions, not received any questions from members on this occasion. Moving on to item 7, year of delivery, capital projects. The purpose of this is to provide the Connected Communities Committee with updates on key capital projects being undertaken by Herefordshire Council in 2026. For the avoidance of doubt, the projects that were chosen for discussion today and that have been listed in the review, the year of delivery review, were ones that were specifically mentioned as part of the year of delivery in press releases last year. So they were seen to be fundamental to the success of the year of delivery. Right, introduction. We've got officers here to talk about this report. That's Roger Allenby, Service Director, Economy and Growth, John Hobbs, Corporate Director, Economy and Environment, and Scott Tompkins, Delivery Director, Infrastructure, Economy and Environment. I think at this stage I would like to ask who's leading on the report. Is that going to be yourself, Roger, or are you going to take it individually as we go through them one by one? Does someone want to do a brief introduction to the overall report to begin with?
We can briefly introduce it if that helps, and then it'll be one by one, I suspect, on each project because each one's got a different lead.
Yeah, we're going to take them in the order that they were presented. If anyone wants to do a brief overview of where we're at with the year of delivery, that's fine to begin with. But otherwise, I'm happy just to move on with the projects. It's up to you.
I think it's probably best just to focus on each of the projects. What you've got before you is a pack that we use regularly to update cabinet and cabinet members on their respective lead project areas. It covers kind of a key summary of where we are with each, both what we've just achieved, what we're working on now, and what kind of comes next, and then highlights the kind of key risks. So it's probably worth just working through each one, if that's okay, Chair.
Absolutely fine, thank you. So in the pack that was provided, the first project that was listed is the Hereford Western Bypass Phase 1. Now, it's our intention, we have discussed this, many of you will be fully aware that the full business case for this is being published, I believe, later this week, and that this committee is looking at the full business case and will be making recommendations shortly after that at our next meeting in just over a week's time, I believe. Yes. So there's very little point in spending too long today on the bypass because we're going to be devoting a whole meeting to it. However, I just wanted to clarify a few things, and I know there's a couple of questions before we move forward that I'd just like to check. It's my understanding that the full business case is going to be published on Friday this week, which is the deadline for papers. Can someone just confirm that we will be getting the assessment criteria as well on that day, and we won't just be presented with the full business case and then say, go away, make of it what you will?
Yeah, so the assessment criteria is the same criteria that was published and accepted by Cabinet in April. We will share that criteria along with the full business case this week for scrutiny for next week. And what I will do is I'll highlight what's changed in the criteria because we accepted quite a lot of the recommendations that scrutiny had made to us, and we updated that criteria based on that. So we'll share the criteria again, which is the criteria that will be used to judge the full business case.
So that will just be the criteria with the additional granularity, or will it actually be giving the information that in the assessment criteria that's been drawn from the full business case to be able to assess whether it's met the criteria?
No, it won't have that the information being drawn out of the full business case. That's in process of being done, and it'll be done to be presented to Cabinet on the 10th of September. So we would normally share Cabinet papers with you in advance. So that's what we're still working on that.
Okay, I need to think about that. Thank you, because obviously the full business case will include all the answers to the assessment criteria. It's how it's interpreted, I'm guessing.
The information's there in the full business case. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will bring a set of slides to introduce the item at the beginning, and in that I will highlight all the key bits that are coming out of the full business case that fit into the criteria. But I can't share the assessment report, one, because we haven't written it yet, and two, because it needs to go to Cabinet. It's a Cabinet paper.
Okay, thank you for that. Do I have any questions from other members of the committee? Yes, Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going back to that and what we're going to be looking at in our next meeting. When the outline strategic business case came to us, we did get an assurance that when we get the full business case, it will be based on this project as a standalone project. So that's great. Thank you for confirming that. I'm surprised to see that this has a.
Sorry, for the sake of the transcription, can you confirm that is the case? It will be just based on phase 1, yes?
Yes, the full business case that's been produced is just analysing phase 1 as a standalone project.
Thank you.
Great, that's good to know, thanks. I'm surprised to see that this has a green RAG rating, as I would say that the risks in here are not minor and the cost variance isn't minimal, and planning affordability, there are still various risks in there. I mean, I'm happy to leave that until our next meeting, but I do think it's surprising that it has a green RAG rating.
Did you want to answer that?
All I can say is that we review this every month with cabinet. I think it's green because it's about the progress that's being made, and it is about the risks that are identified. You're right, they are large risks, but we also have very good mitigation strategies in place for all of those risks, and we report on that every month to cabinet. So which is why and as far as progress is being made on the scheme, we've been rating it as a green.
I think we're going to be spending some good time on this very soon. Yeah, Councillor Baker.
The problem I find with these large capital projects, with the administration only lasting 4 years, we run the risk of losing it every time the council changes. Back in 2019, we lost out, the Conservative group lost the majority. The incoming group, I think was a coalition, decided to cancel this project that was ready to go. I understand it was just a couple of months from the first shovels going in the ground, and it was cancelled at great cost to the residents of this county. We've now got 10 months for the next election. Is that going to happen again? Do we run the risk of losing this? Or is there any way, somehow, that we can guarantee that it will carry on no matter who runs the council next year? Thank you.
I think if we could solve that problem, I think we need to wait and see. I think we're going to be talking about this at length next week, but I don't think there's. I think that's a difficult conundrum, but I appreciate where you're coming from, Councillor Baker. Right, I'm going to move on to the next project that's been listed, and that's Hereford Transport Hub. Would somebody like to talk us through the report with basically run over the activity, the key risks, and planned activity? Just talk this through for the purposes of the meeting, please.
Yeah, happy to do so. So, Transport Hub is nearing completion. We're due to open, I believe it's around the 20th of October. The scheme will be completed and opened. It's been going very well with McPhillips, the contractor on site. They have completed all of the works to establish the waiting area and been working quite well on the public realm section. As far as from a construction point of view, I would say that's gone pretty smoothly. They've stayed to program. We had one issue that came up during construction, which was around some design issues with where the main scheme ties into the highway. It took us some time to deal with that. That caused about a 45 days of delay in the project. Some of which we were able to gain back. But from a cost perspective, it's a project that is looking to finish underspent, under budget. So, been very pleased with the project.
Now, I'm pleased to say we do have some guests joining us today from some of the users, the bus companies. After our lines of inquiry meeting last week, it was decided that we would send out some invites. It was last minute. So I would like to thank, I think we've got Alex Clark is joining us from, sorry, which was the bus company for Alex? Newport Transport. And so would you introduce yourself again? So, gentleman on the end.
Sorry, Jason Bush from Sargent Brothers.
Thank you. So what I think I would be keen to hear is your opinion on the new design for the Transport Hub. I know that you have been attending the Enhanced Partnerships meetings, which I think Scott's been you attended the last one, Scott, didn't you, with other bus operators? Just to hear your opinion on the new design and how you how you see this as an improvement for the city. Thank you. I think if you'd like to start in the room, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the integration of bus and rail and pedestrian access is an asset for any city. we did have some reservations, and we still do have some operational reservations. We made these points collectively as a working group of operators that will be using the facility. Scott's very kindly sent me. Unfortunately, I missed the last EP meeting. I was off on another project, but it's very kindly sent me some notes on mitigation. Most of it revolves around referring back to your modelling with our concerns around congestion and around traffic flow and around the mix of PCVs and private cars exiting the network rail parking facility. But the principal concern as bus operators that we have is the fact that the design is drive-in reverse out, and recent guidance on reversing in risk assessment and in operational planning always moves that the first point you start from is to remove the risk by removing the need to reverse. And so that principal concern is still there because, you know, as we've heard, the project's all but completed. So we are where we are. I think our operational standpoint will be that we will do risk assessment. We will monitor how we go once we start operating out of the facility, and then we'll feed back to the council where our own internal safety assessment takes us to. I don't see there's much more we can do with that. Some of the concerns about the layover facilities have been addressed, and it looks like that there might be some additional resource to provide rest facilities for drivers laying over in the adjacent parking area. And then there's mention of enforcement as well to try and keep private cars out of the facility, which is it's all good, it's all healthy. AMPR is quite effective. So I think realistically we are where we are, and we're going to have to go forward, see how we get on operationally, and then I think once we've made significant assessment, we'll be able to feedback if there is any, and it will only be minor adjustments because the project's all but delivered now, isn't it?
Thank you. Alex, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to comment. Obviously, we're a very new player to the Herefordshire bus scene, but something we would like to expand on, particularly because, from my personal experience, and it's a credit to the officers of Herefordshire Council, is how engaging they are with bus operators. We work with some local authorities who probably don't even know we exist. As a new player to the game, but also being an operator that uses a reverse out bus station and have done in Newport for probably since about 1992, reversing off stands is never a good idea if you can avoid it. But if you do it, you need to do it with space. And if you look at something like Swansea or Preston, who have huge amounts of space to reverse, this is very, very confined. And there's even just small operational issues for us. So, for example, a vehicle is unable to reverse off a stand, or certainly stands 1, 2, and 3, if another vehicle is waiting at the traffic lights. So we have to wait for the traffic lights to go green in order to reverse off a stand. That's where the danger of conflict comes in. And also, from a bus driver's point of view, is a driver wants to try to run their service to time. They want, and as an operator, we want to. And it's very frustrating when you're ready to go, but there's a bus behind you that's waiting at a set of traffic lights that potentially at peak times won't clear on the first green phase. So I think there's small issues like that we need to address, because particularly in the winter months and in night time, the visibility, and if it's raining as well, does cause a concern for me. The other concern for me is that whilst you can get some fantastic transport modelling, and we've seen some modelling for Newport and there's some proposals here, it's all very nice when things work. Yes, everything fits in nice little 10-minute chunks in a bus station. It takes no account for congestion, and unfortunately Hereford is blessed with the same kind of things we are in Newport, is one bridge over a river and the problems that causes. But it also means that we can't increase services. And the problem we've got in Hereford is this peak at between about about 4:15 to about 4:45, which is generally the college movements. And I generally don't see how 5 of us are going to fit in that bus station. The big concern going forward, and nobody can really give us an answer on this, is what happens to the other bus stations. Now, the Hopper bus station seems to be staying. Nobody can tell us what's happening to the country bus station. If that closes permanently, are all those buses expected to fit into the new transport hub? There's absolutely nowhere for coaches at all. And I know that Jason brought it up at the time, is at times of rail replacement, I doubt we'll even get into the transport hub because it'll be filled with rail replacement coaches. That's my concern. Is it better than the current facility? Yes, it's got to be better than the current facility. I think we just need to, as operators and as the local authority, is neither side negating their responsibilities. If we raise a concern, it needs to be acted upon. If you raise a concern as a local authority, we need to be responsible as bus operators and make sure that our staff are doing what we should be doing. But I said, all I can say is the dialogue between operator and local authority, from my point of view, has been absolutely superb.
Thank you, for Alex, for that. I'd like to ask one of the officers, whoever, to come back on some of the comments and to see if there's mitigation.
Yeah, very happy to. And I would echo for both of you, the engagement with bus operators has been really helpful, and we you have my commitment that we will continue to do that throughout the process. I think there are still some operational issues that will need to be worked out as we get the bus station, as we get the new hub open and start to operate it. And you have our commitment that we will work with you to make it work smoothly. Just pick up on a couple of issues. I think if there was one lesson learned for us, I think in this project they engaged quite a lot with bus operators at the very beginning, but that was a number of years ago, and then through the design process with the architects. And then I think there was a period of time when there wasn't a engagement, when the scheme went quiet and it was going through all the back office processes and going out to tender. And I think some more involvement with bus operators during that period, both to keep everybody informed and to pick up on any issues that came out of it, would have been very helpful. We did go. I attended an enhanced partnership meeting about 2 months ago, and we did look at what opportunities we had to make changes even at this late stage in the design because some things weren't constructed at that point. We did go and explore some of those things. A drive-in, drive-out situation was just not possible to do. We could physically do it, but there was problems with it passing through road safety audit. The safety auditors are much happier with a design that keeps pedestrians out of the bus operating area. So the way that the hub is designed is that none of the pavements or natural desire lines for passengers results with passengers walking in the area where buses will be operating. So the area that is for buses only. There'll be no other traffic there. So buses will be able to pull in, do their reversing out maneuvers and exit the area with no other traffic there. We did make some changes, so we were able to adjust one of the curb lines on Bay 1 so that the buses could back up in a straight line and not have to make any sort of turning movement, which makes it slightly safer. And we've been able to do things like, one of the things that was picked up was about not having enough RTPI boards, information boards, electronic information boards up within the centre. So we've been able to add an additional one of those in as well. And I'm really hoping to come back to the partnership at the next meeting with some positive news on some driver. So there is driver facilities at the transport hub itself, but not in the lay-by area, which is a couple-minute walk away. So we're hoping to be able to maybe potentially put a porter cabin into the bus lay-by area to provide for some facilities for drivers as well. So, but yeah, I'm committed to coming back to the partnership meetings and keeping that dialogue going.
Thank you. There were some quite strong concerns there, I think, raised. I think, how was the decision to go with the drive-in, reverse-out design reached? I mean, were the bus companies consulted when that decision was made? Or, because it seems to me as if, from what I heard from Alex, that is not something that is particularly advised these days?
I would disagree with that. So the safety auditors were quite clear about the type of arrangements, and there was a full report that was done by the architects, which was publicly available. We can share, which looked at a drive in, drive out, and a reverse out, and set out the reasons why we chose that decision. And bus operators were involved at that time, but again, it was quite a while ago before the construction was determined. And I would say that this is not uncommon. So Gloucester's hub, in the new one they just built in Cheltenham, Worcestershire's, Portsmouth, they're all drive-in, reverse-out arrangements. The key to it is keeping pedestrians out of the area. So it is a bus-only area. So.
Councillor Peverty?
Thank you. So I know that some of our bus operators have quite old fleet, and presumably in order to be able to do the kind of reverse manoeuvre, they've got to have all sorts of camera sensors and alarms and things like that. Are all our operators, are their fleets equipped to be able to do that when the time comes?
So an awful lot of them are now equipped with cameras, but I think even if they do have cameras, there's always the issue of if it's raining, if the weather's inclement, if it's dark, how well those things work. Not all buses will have them. There'll be some older buses that don't have, for instance, sensors on them. So, but which is why it's important that it is as safe an operation as you can make it within the constraints of the site.
Will all our operators, will their fleet be ready to manage that? Will they have the required equipment? Are there any kind of legal specifications about what the buses need to be equipped with in order to reverse in that space?
Okay, we'll just come back one step. So most older buses are not equipped with, no buses that I can think of are equipped with parking sensors like you would have on your car. Most older vehicles probably won't have any sort of reversing camera. So when you reverse, you're reliant on both of the side rear view mirrors. It's a skill, and the people who do this are professional drivers, and by and large, they're very good at it. But as my colleague mentioned, it only takes fading light or winter sun in your eyes, reflecting on the windows in the bus to compromise the view to rear, or rain, or anything like that. So there will be some vehicles that will find it a little bit more challenging than others. Our personal fleet is an average age of under 6 years, so pretty much most of it is fitted with reversing cameras. So when you select reverse, the CCTV screen comes up with a rearward view. But that's okay at the beginning of a winter's day, but by lunchtime, with all the road dirt and mud that you pick up across the course of the operating day, that can become compromised. So all of the tech is there, but ultimately you'll be coming back to 20th century skill and mirrors. And the other point that's really key to acknowledge is whilst there are lots of reverse out bus stations in the United Kingdom, this has the combination of reverse out in a quite confined space. So the ones you're name checking have a wee bit more room for manoeuvre and error. And then the compounded effect of the dwell being accelerated by the vehicle waiting for the lights to change and the other drivers becoming frustrated or impatient. You're starting to bring in now lots of human errors that, unfortunately, when you get those human errors in the wrong sequence, is where incidents occur. And it may be that initially we just have vehicle on vehicle, but the nightmare scenario is that even with the best mitigation in place, pedestrians will find their way around mitigation, and the nightmare scenario is a vehicle on pedestrian collision, because, well, honestly, if you're reversing a bus, it's not like bumping into something in your car. It takes a wee while longer before you realise what's happened, and that's when an incident can become really quite serious. So there is lots in this, and these are all unknowns. And until we start operating, we won't know how much any one of these factors is going to be a concern to us. But coming back to what I said a few minutes ago, we will carry out our own route risk assessment on the situation. And then where that leads us to, we will be, I think, both morally and legally duty bound to act upon the findings of those risk assessments. So the more we can do now, and I accept that the project is all but delivered, but the more we can do now to understand and think about even the slightest little alterations to what we need to do, the better that will be on the longer haul. Because the nightmare scenario is that something happens, and following that investigation process after something happening, the recommendation is, well, it's just not safe to use. And then we find ourselves with a transport infrastructure facility that's unusable.
Thank you. Councillor Pebbody.
I just wanted some clarity and to understand whether all our operators have the right safety equipment. If there are any legal barriers to them reversing, if they don't have, for example, the sounding alarms or the cameras and stuff like that. So it was just really, would the design mean that some operators can't use it unless they upgrade their fleet?
No, so the minimum safety requirements for a PCV with regards to this scenario are view to rear, so the mirrors, and then a reversing horn. They are the minimal legal requirements. Unfortunately, they have been for probably the last 30 years as well. So, but the technology, the reversing cameras, that's not currently enshrined in the annual test legislation.
I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Baker. Just looking at the reversing area, will that be lit? Is it going to have lights at night so that it will be, when they're operating, there will be light, that area will be light, it won't be a dark pool that people could be walking around in?
Yes, there's lighting throughout the transport hub.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lise. Thank you. Councillor Pebbody.
So you've mentioned that there'll be some layover facilities, so there will be some bus drivers who are spending some time at the hub before they change services or something like that, and there are no electrical charging points in the scheme. I'm just aware that in order to kind of increase our chances of getting a really good local authority bus grant allocation, we have to show that we're taking steps to decarbonise our fleet. Is that going to compromise our ability to get the kind of funding we need to support our bus services, the fact that there are no EV charging points there?
So there was never an intention of providing EV charging at the bus hub because, one, most buses aren't there long enough to charge, and two, the facilities in that area of the city, from a network grid point of view, did not have the power capacity to put in the type of chargers that would be required. So they were never part of the original construction plans. I think it is something we've got to look for the future, and as technology changes, and it is very fast changing with vehicles, we have to be prepared to put investment in and make changes in the future to deal with that. But as far as I'm aware, it does not impact on our ability to apply for BSIP funding. And Chair, if I could just point out that Alex is one.
I was just about to ask him to come in. Alex, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to pick up what Jason said. Really, there is no legal requirement. Our newer buses have cameras, our older ones don't. It's like everything else. You can reverse as dangerously or as safely as you want to. I think, for me, picking up what I said earlier, is when you look at places like Gloucester, but particularly like Swansea and Preston, the amount of space that is behind the driver to reverse, it's almost a full vehicle length and a bit more, and then there's a running lane. So any vehicles moving up and down the bus station are never in conflict, or as minimal in conflict they are, with a reversing vehicle. So once a bus has reversed, they know they can clear buses, both sides of them, once they've completed the reverse, and they shouldn't have to worry about any vehicle behind them. The concern with this one is keeping the area behind the buses sterile. The road that runs along the back of the health centre, which eventually comes into the bus station, the temptation for me is cars will come down there, get to a point where they realise there's no entry signs or whatever, can't turn round, and then come through the bus station. That includes any refuse collection, which is actually from the bus station itself or nearby buildings, maintenance vehicles. There's the Network Rail, I think it's a Network Rail car park, forgive me if I'm wrong on that one, that sits at the back of the bus station. They're under instruction to turn right out of there. Again, we've all done it. I'll turn left. That's, for me, is if it's us as bus operators, there will never be a point where you'll never get a collision. The human nature, as Jason said, human nature just happens. But we ourselves will try to police that area. It's other people, and particularly, this is the biggest thing we've got a problem with in all our bus stations at the moment, is bikes. Bikes just seem to be completely above all rules and regulations, and they will just speed through no entry signs, particularly delivery bikes and people like that. That I would say in Newport is our biggest single concern, and our feedback from drivers at the moment is bikes.
Thank you, Alex. That's really helpful. I think you flagged some very interesting and slightly concerning points here today. I would like to ask one question. When were the bus companies consulted on the design process, please? On the final design, not the process.
Yeah, so that would have been a couple of years ago, and before we started the construction of the project, there was I know they were, because we had a day out at the Shell store where we laid out the design in cones, and the bus companies bought some of their larger buses to try to negotiate that, so that all the information that was fed back from that to the designers was taken into account in the final design. But I don't have the exact dates, but I could come back to you of when they were told.
Did the companies express concern on that day about the drive-in reverse out design, please? Okay, John.
Sorry. Yeah, hi. I'm just reading the cabinet report from the 22nd of July, 2020. Sorry, the 27th of October 2022, where it addresses all of the consultation that took place. And I'll just find the bit now. It says in paragraph 10, the drive-in reverse-out dyro option and the public realm space in front of the Hereford railway station incorporates as much green space as possible and provides the best separation of people from vehicle movements, retains the best view and enhances the setting of the station. The consultees in this were quite considerable. Network Rail Transport for Wales, Rail and Bus Herefordshire, RBFH, taxi operators, bus and coach operators, Hereford City Council, Hereford Master Plan Team, Hereford Bid, Cabinet members, ward members and March's local enterprise plan. So it looks like the design of this and the way it operates was examined in great detail and approved by Cabinet back then.
Thank you. But just going back to Scott's point, when the bus operators came around and had a look at the cones when it was all laid out, were there any comments around the drive-in reverse out design at that point, please?
I'd have to go back and look at the officer's notes. I wasn't there when that took place.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'm aware we've got a lot to get through today. Yeah, Councillor Pebbody.
I haven't understood. It says that there's a dispute, dispute and seeking legal advice on adjudication. Was that about the design? That was highways and design, was it?
Yeah, that has since been resolved.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was going to question the green rating when it looked to me as there needed to be this kind of senior management intervention to kind of get things back on track there, but that's resolved now. Great.
Yeah, I've met with the contractor and we've resolved that debate using the mechanisms in the contract which require, because there's statutory scheme of adjudication in construction contracts, but before you get there you can have an intermediate step, which is where it goes to senior officers. And so I've met them twice just last week, and we've agreed a way forward which I think is beneficial to us in the end.
It would seem that there were a couple of the concerns fall into two categories here: operational concerns around how it's going to be used, and some of those will be worked out as when it opens and you get to understand the layout and the day-to-day running of it. Some are design, obviously. one of the concerns right at the top was about insufficient space at peak times. How confident are we that there is sufficient space at peak times, or in the scenarios that have been mentioned today, when we might have that we might be using the buses rather than the trains for whatever an alternative service?
As confident as we can be from the modelling. So when it was designed, the modelling put in additional capacity, 4 times the additional capacity to what was there now. We've shared some of that recently with the bus operators, because they asked that very same question. But there should be sufficient capacity there for much more than what we currently deliver at the station. I do take the operator's point about the concerns about the traffic lights. So what they're speaking about is there is a set of traffic lights which will release buses from the parking area within the transport hub out onto the City Link Road. The City Link Road is a road that gets congested, and so the worry is that there would be backup on that. And what I've promised is that we will monitor this through early operations, and if we need to adjust the timing of those lights, or how those lights respond to buses queuing for it, we will certainly look at that. But the idea is that you would want to get the buses out of the station as quickly as possible, or at least as quickly as they can do now from the current station and the current traffic light setup.
Thank you, Scott. I think Alex wants to come in. Yes, Alex?
It was just a point of clarification, please, Chair. We didn't start operating in Herefordshire until 2024. So to be fair to the operators, the officers, we wouldn't have been consulted as an operator.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been looking forward to this transport hub being introduced in the city for years. And so I was really quite excited when it came before Planning Committee. I don't remember any bus operators coming to committee as consultees. And I don't think we actually spoke about drive-in, reverse out. I drove route masters for 12 months in West London when I came out of the army. I was just early 20s, so I was all full of it. But I could stick a route master through the eye of a needle forwards or backwards. But I had the added luxury of having a clippy on the back if I did need help reversing. But we certainly didn't discuss any of this at committee. But because then again we weren't asked to. We were presented with a report, which to me was first class, and I think I actually proposed that it be approved, this application, and so I'm really quite happy with it. But these matters, I suppose, is it a bit late for these things to be coming forward? I mean, if people can't, if they're not able to reverse their bus out of a stand, are they in the right job? Would it be expensive to put a camera on the back? I don't know.
Do you want to come back on that? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You make a fabulous point, actually, about crude operation vehicles. And so when one-man operation became pretty much the norm in the early 1970s, we had this transitional period where we did practices that were safeguarded by that second person, but we did them on our own, and we learned some very painful lessons in this industry. And the fact is that the solution to this kind of problem is supervision. So you have to have a marshal on the operating area who has control of what's going on. I've certainly for 9 years operated a very old and cramped bus station in Canterbury city centre, and once we'd got all the pedestrian barrier mitigation in place, and we had 4 people who worked across the operating face, marshalling vehicles, much as you would on an aircraft carrier deck, another cramped operating environment. So long as somebody was in control and there were clear rules, you could absolutely control the situation, and we managed to take out all but minor bus-on-bus collisions, and those were usually done at the outer extremities. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that Herefordshire County Council has to employ somebody to do that, but that speaks to your point about when you needed help, there was someone there for you. I think coming back to the why wasn't this mentioned before, I can't comment. My involvement in this has only been recently, same for Alex. And it's really only in the last couple of years that Sargent Brothers has been a significant operator in the city centre. So we are where we are is an expression we hear all the time in popular culture, and that's where we find ourselves. But that doesn't mean that we can just pretend everything's rosy in the garden, because the consequences of getting this wrong are pretty unpleasant. And I've had the personal misfortune to have to deal with those. So that's why I do speak with a degree of passion and caution on the subject.
And I think we all genuinely appreciate that, because nobody can say that these concerns haven't been raised in a public forum after today. So I genuinely appreciate that. You want to come back in, Councillor Baker?
I was just reminded of when I'm sure we've all been on a package holiday to Spain, where you're picked up at the airport with a bit of coach, and these coaches are usually in a public car park, and they're all driving reverse out, and I've never seen any problems there. I don't think they got cameras on these modern coaches, but they certainly got beepers or warning signs. But I think the problem is at this particular bus station, if we got too many buses coming in, then could we not alter the routes of some of them that don't really need to be at Hereford Station? They could still continue to be at the central bus station behind where is it? It's on Commercial Road, isn't it? So that we can be flexible, I suppose, with the amount of buses going in and coming out, certainly at the beginning when this is all new, and we'll see how we get on. Suck it and see, really.
John, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah. So yeah, in my life before working in local government, I worked in the railway industry, which has the advantage that at least the vehicles run on rails and you know where they're going. But one of the things that's really important in where we do stuff around the highway is how we introduce change. And we follow quite a strict process that's called the RSA process, Road Safety Audit. And I think your point about, because I was thinking banksman in civil engineering terms, and certainly in the transitional phase, I think we should seriously, consider having a marshal until we get into what I would call steady state, because we don't want to have an accident to find out we've got a problem. We want something that I would equate to a marshal type person, making sure that we don't have the accidents and then finessing the way we operate. Because I think we're all going to have to learn how to use this facility in a way that provides all of the benefits. I think that there's technology available as well that we might be able to use, certainly in relation to clearing out the traffic, so you can give the buses the priority to get out of the bus station and so on and so forth. But I'm pleased to hear that we're working well together, and we should be able to do this in a sort of working group as we bring the thing into operation.
I think that's a good point. I think it might be a recommendation this committee could make, is that a marshal's. I mean, my initial thought is, drivers come and drivers go, and there will be new drivers on the routes from time to time. And then, if the marshal is only there for 6 months, what happens then? But I think that's for greater minds than mine, certainly.
The
But
question is, who would employ that person and who would pay that person?
again, I think that's above our pay grade. But I think we can make the recommendation. I think what's come out today is that there is a concern about safety, and a suggestion that's come out is that we have a marshal, and I think that's a positive recommendation as a committee we could make. So I thank everybody for us getting to that point today. I'm now going to move on to the next item on the agenda, if that's okay with everybody, because we've got a lot to get through. Which brings us to Ross Enterprise Park. I'd like to thank our bus companies for joining us today. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of this meeting. But obviously, also, if you want to go off and do something else, that's also entirely reasonable. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you so much, though. Really, very much appreciated, because it was a very short time scale, the invite for coming today. And I think your contribution has been invaluable. So thank you. Thank you. Looking at Ross Enterprise Park. Which I see nearly every day, living very close to it, and it's moving at a pace. And who would like to talk us through where we are with Ross? Is that with you, Roger?
I can provide a quick update if that would help. So we finally, after 15 years of having a sign up saying "coming soon," it's coming soon, which is really good news. So we are on site with the contractor, putting in place all the works required to open up the first phase, which is 4 hectares of 4 acre, sorry, of development plots. That first set of works includes the junctions, the section 278 off the A40, a kind of spine road into the site, all the flood alleviation works required to develop not just this phase, but the next phase of works on the site. And we will get to the point where, a bit like the model we've got for the Hereford Enterprise Zone, we effectively create development ready plots for onward sale. We've had a lot of interest already, so there are so for the 4 plots we've already got more interest than plots from quite a range of businesses. A number of them are, all of them are in kind of high growth, more kind of higher value employment sectors. But a number of them are in kind of key growth sectors for the area around things like cyber defence and security. So we're at the point now where negotiations and kind of discussions with those interested, 6 interested parties are in an advanced stage. Nothing signed in terms of kind of heads of terms yet, but those discussions are ongoing. It's worth remembering that for a smallish business to come and invest in the county, this is a business signing up to multi-million pounds worth of investment. And whilst councils are used to multi-million pounds worth of investment, that kind of raising that kind of private finance and committing to a long-term payback is quite a big thing for a company to make. So those discussions are ongoing. As reflected in the note, we are now looking at how we might be able to accelerate bringing forward the second phase of development, because the business interest has been so strong. And we are currently trying to just finalise what the costs of the additional infrastructure would be to bring that second phase in, so that we could submit a capital programme request into this year's budget setting process. What happens through that, as I'm sure you're aware, is around about July, August time, we're asked to put forward kind of outline business cases for capital budget requests that feed through to the February decision-making process in full council. The request we're pulling together at the moment is that, can we retain the land sale values from the first phase in order to then reinvest that to unlock that second phase of development, building on its success and its momentum. So from my perspective, it's a really good news story. We're finally there. We're finally on site, and that the kind of proof is in the pudding, so to speak. That businesses have immediately come forward, expressed interest, to the point now where we think we've got enough interest in order to kind of trigger that next phase of expansion.
I mean, that is great news, and as I say, I don't need to declare an interest as it's in my ward, but I am keenly aware of the work that's going on. It's good to hear that there's been a lot of interest. Phase 2, a couple of quick questions. How many units would phase 2 be? Because off the top of my head, I don't have those plans. And when you're talking about bringing it forward, remind me when it was planned for originally and when you might be bringing it forward to.
So it would be another 4 acres, so it's essentially the same size again, doubling the size. We didn't have an absolutely firm date in planned for phase 2. It was always there as a kind of so the £8 million that was allocated capital receipts money, and that's the bit that's really made the difference. So we've been applying for grant funding for years to open up all of the site in one go. We put a levelling up fund bid in, which actually was was selected. The bus station project you've just talked about was selected through levelling up funding instead. That was for £19 million to open up the whole site in one go. So the real difference is that £8 million that the council kindly approved a couple of years ago in the capital programme to do those enabling works. The second phase was always based on, let's see what the take-up of the first phase is in order to understand, therefore, what the business model would be. Because the next phase, given where we are in terms of budget positions as a council, would only ever be on either borrowing and then repayment, or on being able to reinvest from the income driven from phase 1. But now we're confident that the works that we've done so far, some of that enabling work, so the cost of the road junction, the cost of the road into the site, the cost of the flood alleviation works on site, there's a number of upfront costs which fund phase 2, so the investment will be much proportionately lower for the second phase and that extension of existing works. So there was no firm date, but the level of business interest is giving confidence to Cabinet that we can make that decision now.
So I didn't quite get that, but you're looking at another 4 units, We're looking at money to go into next year's budget based on capital receipts with a view to extending straight away, continuing the work effectively at the end of this phase 1 and going straight into phase 2. Is that what you suggested?
In effect, yes, that's what we're looking at. It'd be another 4 acres. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is a business per acre plot. So you can break out those units into different uses. Or if a really big business came along, they might want to take up essentially a couple of plots themselves. So, but it's those 4 acres of development ready plots that can then be subdivided if depending on what the business interest.
And a quick question on and how are you if you've been oversubscribed, which is fantastic. I feel. How are you going to decide who gets the plots and who's going to make that decision?
So there is a so the way this works is similar to the Hereford Enterprise Zone. So we obviously have an economic strategy for the county which identifies target growth sectors. We are looking to drive average salaries up. So we're looking for businesses that offer good employment prospects with a high level of salary. There are therefore criteria that we set in terms of looking at when businesses kind of come forward. We are then consulting the Herefordshire Business Growth Board as a way of determining whether those are the right businesses in the right sectors, and it's working through that kind of scoring process in terms of selection.
So there's a matrix.
Yeah.
Questions? Yeah. Sorry, Richard.
Why such large units? Because I do nearly all my business in Ross, and all the local people, all the local companies that are there that probably would like to expand cannot expand into a 1 acre plot with probably 5 to 10,000 square feet. Why have you got such large ones when businesses like to start small and build up?
So a couple of things from that really. So as just mentioned, it is possible to subdivide the plots. So from a kind of a design perspective in terms of the utility connections, the base and the levels and everything, it's those 4 acres. It is possible to subdivide them down for different businesses to take up units of different scale. But the basis of trying to make the judgment as to size, so we had Savills, who are a major national agency, and they did lots of research for us looking at what the market appetite is to come to locate in Ross, what the size of plots would be from the target kind of scale of businesses, because this isn't just about helping any local business kind of take a step up, because employment land is limited. We're trying to kind of change the economy over a period of time too. So we do want businesses of a certain size that are offering a certain level of employment opportunities to try to improve our productivity and improve the average wage at levels, because part of the issue we have as a county is the average wages are about 10 to 15% below the national average. That impacts people's ability, living quality, whether kind of quality of housing, quality of food, young person's aspiration. We lose younger generations because we haven't got the employment here to kind of keep people and attract them for the future. So it's that balance between creating the employment land and making it available to enable growth, but not any growth. It's got to be kind of targeted, and there's got to be a strategy around that for the best use of the growth of the county. So that's why it's trying to, with input from experts like Savills, trying to target the land at the right kind of business at the right kind of size.
I mean, I think it's a lot of it is we're not building these. We're not building a park. It's that we're just putting in the infrastructure for somebody else to come in, aren't we? So I think that might have been part of the thinking behind it. Okay, I just want to move, just looking at a couple of the other key risks and issues before we move on. The utility works. I know there were some concerns over the utilities on the main road. What's been discovered, I know there were some concerns around the, was it fibre and everything on the road outside? Has that all been resolved? Is that all sorted? And the highway crossing, which I know residents have been desperate for years. Can you tell us now, you've said the highway crossing, the Section 106 highway crossing is being brought forward. Is there a timeline for when they might be getting that crossing, please?
So In terms of the issues with some of the utility companies, so unfortunately, utility companies move at their own pace, and you can only use National Grid to do electricity. You can only use OpenReach to do broadband connectivity. So it's a challenge for any development is kind of working through some of those challenges, some of those issues. There's no fundamental problems. It's just an issue of getting the right people on the site at the right time to do the work. So there's no problems we can't overcome. All those works are programmed in. They're all within budget, but it has been a bit slower to get the utility companies to do that work than we would have ideally liked. In terms of the crossing, what we've done is there was obviously a number of 106 projects in the area from some of the housing developments that have happened, and some related kind of investment that was from this council project. So what we've done, working with Scott, who leads on the 106 implementation for the council, is identify the bits that would make best sense for our current contractor to be on site to deliver. So extended the contract of the contractor that's doing Ross Enterprise Parks as well. So they're there, they will do some of that work, and they are due to complete that work towards the end of this annual year and in January. So the totality of Ross Enterprise Park, including those 106 elements, will be concluded within that time frame.
Great. So they might be getting their crossing by Christmas. Yeah.
Crossing for Christmas just for you.
They'll be delighted to hear that. Sorry, Councillor Toynbee, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks for the update. Yeah, we have a responsibility for residents to keep an eye on when public land is being sold off. And you tell us that there's more interest from businesses than available plots. That's all great. Does that mean we can consider retaining more freehold than we'd originally planned, or obviously businesses, if this is a great deal, they're going to want to buy it and own it, aren't they? Are you going to say that we can only do phase 2 if we do sell, or are we doing everything we can? Ideally, it would be nice to have a council business park, wouldn't it?
So obviously the council, a bit like the enterprise zone, retains the kind of the wider site and the infrastructure, but we sell off the individual plots. Mainly that's driven by the business's own interests. So when we meet with the business, we talk about what they want to do and how they want to kind of approach this. The other option is that the council could either build out and rent back units to them, or the council could find a developer to do that for them and then kind of lease back the land, and we go into a joint venture partnership. In the majority of cases, the interest so far for us Enterprise Park, as it has been for Hereford Enterprise Zone, is in the business buying and retaining the land. Now, that doesn't mean it's of great value to them. In fact, it's usually the opposite. So if you build a site on the Hereford Enterprise Zone, it's usually worth less than the money you've paid to build it, because the market conditions aren't there to support the nature of that investment. We see that with our own assets. So assets that we've built on the Enterprise Zone are worth less once they're built than they are when the investment that you put in. The investment that they're putting in is about how they generate output from the land through their business, not through the growth of the value of the land itself. We are certainly looking at how, with that, and part of the feedback from the Herefordshire Business Growth Board is how, in looking at phase 1 and 2, can we look at business units that could be made available on that site for smaller businesses, and workshop space that it may well be that the council retains that land and then looks at how we build some units out, or go into a partnership to build out some units as part of that.
Would that include something like an incubation hub? That was something we've spoken about in the past. We were hoping to get that in phase 1, but
so that,
can I flag that here and now?
Yeah, certainly can, and it's certainly something, as I say, the Business Growth Board themselves are kind of are airing with us, and we'll look at in terms of the business case for that. Again, it's part of that balance between the income we want to generate from phase 1 enabling to phase 2, and if you don't sell the land, you haven't got the money to kind of reinvest. But phase 2, once it's in place, would lend itself more to being able to do that. But when we talk to the businesses, we don't just go in and say, here's some land, do you want to buy it? We do talk about the options to build out, leasehold and other things. But the businesses, some of these are kind of fairly major businesses, and part of the business model is about how they're investing in the land and the retention of the security of the asset, particularly if you're in cyber and security type businesses, that they want to kind of own and manage everything around the site, and that tends to lead to freehold rather than leasehold sale.
Okay, thanks. One of the other things I'll just flag before we move on, I know you're aware, Roger, is that some residents in the area have been concerned that they've not been getting timely information on the way things are developing and progressing. I'd like just to say it would be great if we could make sure that the local residents are kept fully up to speed on all developments I mean, I'm sure they will be very interested to know that there could be a phase 2 sooner than thought, for instance.
Yeah.
Because that's no small thing. Though fortunately, hopefully, all the roadworks will have been done by that stage.
Yeah, and thank you for flagging that. There's a few residents I don't think have got some of the communications. So there's a new letter going out from the project managers. We're just finalising it today. There's a draft of it kicking around this morning, which will provide a further update, and that will go out after your good self and Councillor Stark kind of flagged that there have been some questions. There's also been some questions around some of the potential kind of surface level kind of runoff in terms of some of the drainage. So we'll manage that as well in terms of some of those communications. All of the drainage systems have been fully attested and approved through planning. And obviously, at the moment, it's just a field, so there is no surface for anything to run off. All of the flood attenuation ponds and everything else will ensure nothing like that happens as part of the project.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can we move on to the next item? Okay. All right, we're now on to the Museum and Art Gallery, which is red-ragged in this report. Who would like to begin?
So I can give you a quick update for this one as well, if that would help us.
I'm sure we'd be delighted. Thank you.
As
Thank
to
you,
where we are. So this is probably my favourite ever project from Herefordshire Council in terms of what it will deliver. But it's a nearly £21 million project to completely renovate and create a new museum and art gallery right in the city centre. And I guess in terms of that kind of context, it's about a big regeneration investment opposite the cathedral that drives kind of a lot of growth, visitors, public pride in Herefordshire city centre that does need that kind of impetus of investment and revitalisation for the future, and a move away traditionally from retail being the kind of footfall driver for the city, to look at over time how inner city living and culture and the visitor and tourism and nighttime economy all plays a part in that revitalisation of Hereford. And this is kind of one of the first kind of major investments around that. It also kind of reflects the fact that tourism in the county is quite strong in the outside of Hereford, but there's not a big singular attraction that drives people into the city centre, and that really.
With the greatest respect, Roger, we know why it's important.
Okay, so
come on, let's deal with the issues.
Just in terms of context.
Yeah.
So the project's been around since 2021, where we applied to Stronger Towns Fund for the first £5 million worth of funding. The council's got £8 million that it's put in from capital receipts, and we've been successful in securing another £5 million from the Heritage Lottery Fund, £1 million from the Government Decarbonisation Fund, a couple of £100,000 from the Claude Duffield Foundation, and about £750,000 from the Arts Council. So there's lots of external investment secured in creating a major attraction, which includes a number of art galleries, but the main ones are 3 double-height museum spaces and an art gallery in the building. And originally, the project included then a new level on the Grade 2 listed building, including a cafe and viewing beacon out over the city. The latest situation is that we went through all the design process, got planning permission, and then started to look through getting a development construction partner involved in the final stages of design. That contractor is a Tier 1 global contractor called Vinci, very experienced contractor. And last November, they came back to us with the bill of quantities, or the kind of detailed kind of cost structure of the project, which includes them going out and engaging all of their supply chain, getting 3 quotes for every major package to get us a kind of a true cost for the first time of what it would cost to build. Up until that point, we've been reliant on external project managers and a design team and some quantity surveyors that were employed through that design team to tell us what they estimated the cost to be. So up until November, to deliver the totality of that project, we knew we were in the region of probably being about £1 million out, is what we were being told. When we got that kind of tendered cost price back through the supply chain, the gap was about £14 million. So what we were being told by the people we were contracting was about 130% out on the actual costs.
Can we get our money back?
So we are in the process of, and can't get too much into details on that because obviously it relates to kind of legal contracts with suppliers, but we are in the process of engaging and seeking some reparations around what that advice that was provided previously.
I mean, to be £14.5 million over the original budget it's not just a little out; it's a lot out.
Yeah, and this is. So there are other projects which obviously that's a big gap, but there are other historic building projects across the country that have in the same time period come back with very significant cost gaps. Some of that obviously can be down to construction cost inflation over the last few years and other factors, but it shouldn't have been that far out, and that is something that we have taken up with those that were doing that work for us.
Were these independent consultants or were these companies?
Companies and a range of companies, specialist companies that both project managers, architects, structural engineers, and others, and a QS element included within that group. When we got to the point where the gap was identified, and such a large gap identified, obviously we've worked through with the lead cabinet members, Councillor Swinglehurst and Councillor Bramer, but also all of cabinet to kind of work through what we were going to do about the project and how we were going to take it forward. Working with the contractor and the funders, and what we identified in around January time was that through de-scoping certain elements of the project, it would bring that gap down to around about £2.8 million.
Can we translate de-scoping, please?
Yeah. So the de-scoping primarily here was the removal of that proposed additional top floor to the building. So
residents are going to get less for more.
Less for about hopefully the same. We'll come on to that. And obviously the fundamental choice here is no museum, or still delivering some of those great ambitions that we've got for the city and the county, and retaining all of that external funding, the £12 million that we've been able to get contractual commitments to. So the top floor of the museum obviously would have been fantastic to have a cafe and a terrace and a viewing beacon, but it added in the region of £10 million to the cost of the project, because it's a grade 2 listed building. It sits on top of the King's Ditch. There's a void underneath the basement of the King's Ditch. The building wasn't engineered to take on that additional floor, and therefore there's a decision to take, as in, is the cafe and the viewing beacon, which would have been very nice, is it worth 10 million quid and no project, or is it worth reducing the scope of what we were looking to try to achieve and retaining the core of the visitor experience, which is the museum, the art galleries, the cultural offering in the building. That de-scoping brought us down to an indicative £2.8 million worth of cost.
Was that with or without the additional funding from Arts Council, or from the Arts Council MEN grant?
So that was excluding it, and forgive me just a second, because we worked then through a process of validating that cost with the technical teams. So we had to go back, look at the technical teams, do all of the structural engineering work. That increased the gap back up again because there were certain things that we thought we could take out that we couldn't. So it increased to about £6.6 million just a few weeks ago. So what we've done in terms of then taking the project forward now is also then look to phasing certain elements of the project, and that's had an impact on two things. So there are a number of there are 4 smaller rooms that could only kind of accommodate up to 20 people on the front of the old building. We're looking to bring that forward now in a future phase, and the lift in the lobby area, we're looking to put that into a future phase. There is a lift in the rear of the building to access all of the floors, apart from where the Woolhope room is on the front, and there will be a platform lift.
Forgive me, but phasing is just another description for not doing it now, not including it in the budget, and paying for it later when we finally got some money to do it. Correct?
Well, I guess it comes back to that fundamental choice again, doesn't it? As to, do you want a county museum and retain the value of the grant, or do you just want the black and white house? As that was our offer for culture and in the county, and once you've got something in place and you've delivered,
I just want this year of delivery. That's what I want, Roger.
Okay. We've worked hard to try to make sure that we've got a project that delivers the full kind of fundamental visitor and cultural offer. And like lots of projects across the country, they've faced, with historic building projects, we've faced financial challenges in trying to achieve that ambition.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this it's too serious to be funny. That's the reality of it. It's not, but it is it's a huge issue, and how we've got here, I just do not know. I mean, I just want to touch on a couple of things here. The requirement for the additional £5 million from Arts Council. Have we had conversations with the Arts Council yet? And how confident are we that that could happen? Because I know Arts Council budgets are really tight at the moment.
So Arts Council have launched in the last 4 weeks or so this process, the new application grant fund called MEND. It's specifically for this kind of thing. It's for where there are historic buildings that need investment to meet kind of rising costs of management and delivery. We've submitted an expression of interest for the full £5 million on the basis that we believe that we fully meet that criteria. We have also got £1 million application in process with another fund as well as a route to kind of meeting that gap.
And is the Stronger Towns money, how long is that on the table for?
So Stronger Towns money is, if you like, contractually committed. So it's a commitment from that fund. Like all the other funds, there's a contract that comes with it and a number of outputs. So basically, what you do when you get government funding or grant funding, like Heritage Lottery funding, is you are committed to delivering a number of services and outputs. For Stronger Towns, we've got that money fully committed to the project currently to deliver outputs around visitor numbers and some education outcomes. We believe we can still fully meet that through the revised project. The roof element wasn't delivering those outputs. And we need to spend that money by the end of March 2028, which is fully achievable within the programme.
And the sad thing is, like so many councillors here, I went on the guided tour when you were showing us around, and we were taken up, and the roof space was the ta-da moment. This is what's going to happen here. You're going to have this wonderful view across the roofscapes of Hereford. This is reimagining this building for another 100 years and using it in a different and exciting way. So it's sad. I mean, is that completely off the table, or is it still part of another phase, or?
So you can't really phase that bit because obviously the structural works to the building require the extra floor to be put on. I agree it would have been an amazing part of the overall offer, but I would slightly argue that the ta-da moment is that we've got loads of cultural exhibits and offer that sit in a storage facility that people in the county don't get to get access or get anywhere near. And there's the Viking and Hoard and lots of other, and the full fit-out experience that Heritage Lottery is funding is still part of
No,
it.
I get your argument. I'm just saying how it was presented to us. Yeah, Councillor Peabody.
We've just heard how everyone was really invested in that. That's the first thing you said, Roger, and the public were as well. So my concerns, because I understand what's happened and how that can happen, especially with big construction projects, especially with listed buildings. So my questions are about communication, because the funding gap was identified in November, and the project was revised in February. But in the Q3 performance in March, the museum was not mentioned at all. And then at Cabinet on the 22nd of May, concerns were raised, and members were told that further details would be provided in the Q4 performance report. And in that report, it said design work has been completed, is now subject to validation before progressing to construction. This step is intended to ensure the project remains affordable and deliverable, with a purple RAG rating. And in between that, there were letters to the Hereford Times, in fact, from Denise North, who is a trustee of the Herefordshire Museum Service Support Group, asking for open, honest communication from the people delivering this flagship project. So the reputational risk of not bringing everyone along with what the project is doing is actually going to impact on the success of the funding applications that we're now going to rely on to bridge that gap, because Arts Council doesn't want to fund something that's already been flagged as a failing project. So I think that's where my real concern is about the comms, which if they're done differently, then we could bring people along and possibly future funders as well.
And it's obviously a fair point. I think it's that judgment, isn't it, behind telling people we've got a solution to a problem and having worked through that problem, as opposed to, so we could have said in November, we've got a £40 million gap, we don't know quite what we're going to do about it, and that alarm it might have caused would put people off funding the project rather than necessarily adding to it. So it's about the kind of that best judgment, and then over that period of time we were talking to each of the current funders, so we identified the gap. Obviously, we've got a contractual relationship with each of those funders we were meeting, who were all fully kind of committed to, Heritage Lottery, fully understood because they've had this problem in other projects across the country. They were working with us and advising us on the things that we could do in order to help take the project forward. So we were working through the steps of that process so that we could come out and confidently say, we've had a problem with the gap, but we've got a solution or a way forward to address the gap, and it took that time to do it. And that's part of the reason why it wasn't communicated at the time we found we had the gap. It was we were working internally through those solutions and working with the partners to try to do that.
Richard?
Before I became a councillor, my profession is building, and I think 17 listed buildings is what my company repaired. I am absolutely staggered to hear this. There is no way, even if you had to put a steel frame inside to carry that roof, it would never cost 14 million. And I sincerely hope the people that have been on the looking after this project don't work for the council any longer. Because if they work for me, they'd be certainly getting their P40s or whatever it is. It's just staggering that you know this has been allowed to go on, and nobody. I was a county councillor. This is the first coming on this committee just as a stand-in. That's the first I've heard of it. This is quite ridiculous.
So, I'm relatively a newcomer to these heritage projects, and my life previously was a quantity surveyor, so I did raise my eyebrows a bit. If I think to what I was doing in Worcestershire before I came here, we saw bridge prices over a period of 3 years, so quite a lot of steel, concrete, as you might imagine, literally double in price. I mean, a bridge went from 7.5 to 13 and a bit, 13.6 million, and it wasn't the only one. There were a couple of projects like that. So, in thinking about what we do about how we got here, there's kind of two questions. One is how much can we lay at the door of Mr. Putin, because that was what started to drive construction costs significantly, particularly things emanating from Ukraine like steel and other raw materials. And I think the other aspect of it is the extent to which we went on to take further decisions on the basis of quantity surveying and estimating advice which might not have been accurate. So I've got to be able to differentiate between those two issues.
Aren't these budgets regularly checked and updated, though? I mean, you have monthly meetings where these kind of things are considered, and if you can see all the other projects that you're doing on a monthly rate, if they're all going up in cost, someone must have been aware that this was going to go up as well.
I think it's the manner in which they went up is what we're considering. Okay, so it was not linear. But I mean, thinking about my previous experience, it was significant how much they stepped. They didn't. It wasn't a glide slope. It was significant leaps every now and again as the market adjusted.
I get that, John. All I'm saying is, this isn't. It's not our first rodeo. We are doing capital projects all the time, and they are going up in cost all of the time. When did we suddenly think that the cost? We haven't looked at that for a couple of years. Maybe that's doubled in cost now.
So, my experience of delivering capital projects in this environment is that construction costs have been fairly steady over the last 20 years, and we haven't seen world events like the ones we've seen recently that have had such a significant effect. Go back 20 years when there was quite significant inflation in the construction industry. The industry had got used to it. It used to have contracts with inflation adjustment in them called you used to apply indices to certain types of material, and the inflation was almost anticipated. It was hardwired in. It's not happened like that this time round. It has literally happened in great big lumps, and you know, no doubt someone will write some economic analysis as to why that was. But you've had the hydrocarbon impact, and you've had the steel and other raw materials, and it's just, I mean, it has come to as a shock to a lot of people. I mean, even if you're sort of buying building materials at a domestic level, the cost, you know, concrete blocks has doubled
Thank
in
you.
price.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think you've explained it. Thank you. I've got. Sorry, I was going to couple of quick questions, then I'll come back to you. What happens if the Arts Council bid is unsuccessful?
So we continue to explore other opportunities, grant funding opportunities, in order to meet that gap. The gap's now at about £3.5 million. So we're making those applications, seeking to kind of fill that gap now. We're also in the process of recommissioning that design element at the moment, so we're not losing time in the project whilst we look to kind of meet that funding gap. I would say, you know, we set off with the project applying for £5 million worth of Stronger Towns funding. We've got £21 million now in the bank. So we have been successful in securing external funding, and hopefully, you know, therefore we're well placed to look for funding to fund this last bit.
Councillor Baker?
Thank you. I was surprised to hear that, that there's a void or something or other underneath this particular building. I'm wondering, were we aware of that before we started the work? And is it likely to fall down? And if it is likely to fall down, can we fill the void in, a bit like they did with the Tower of Pisa? They just stuck a load of concrete in there and stopped it.
So so we knew, obviously, the council's been responsible for this building for a very long period of time, and we knew the building runs under over the King's Ditch. Obviously, as well, in terms of when the building was first constructed, the foundations are reasonably shallow. So part of the big kind of cost that was associated with that extra floor was shoring up the foundations and the way in which that would happen. What the project overall is helping us do as a council is seek to kind of repair and make this building usable again. So before we started this project, we could only have 10 people at a time visiting the museum, the county museum, because of fire regulation restrictions on going up onto the what was the first floor. And we've got major kind of art exhibitions coming to the county, and quite embarrassingly, only 10 people at a time could see them, and people were having to come and watch TV screens in the foyer of the library in order to see the artwork that was upstairs. And what kind of message does that send out about what kind of place we are? So part of the envelope of the totality of the project is doing those things to the building, like repairing that kind of void in order to make the building usable again. And that's a big part of the construction cost, is just making the building fit for future use. Obviously, we as a council would need to meet that cost entirely on our own if we weren't and didn't have and secured the grant funding in order to help us take this project forward. So one of the big advantages from having the grant funding is it helps us bring back into life a building the council would have to fund to do something with anyways if the project wasn't there.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, I've just got one. Can I just ask this one? Then I'll come back to you. I want to know, you know, the impacts of these redesigns. Has a revised equality impact assessment been undertaken? What are the consequences of removing or deferring accessibility features, such as lifts? And have users and accessibility groups been consulted on the revised proposals, please?
So in terms of the original proposals, access groups were fully kind of engaged and input. Yeah, so we've only just now finalised and just recommissioning that redesign, and their quality impact assessment will be part of that process. So at the moment, we've just kind of agreed that revision to the scope. That scope then gets redesigned. The quality impact assessments will be undertaken as part of that. Obviously, building regulations and all those other things, but there is a lift still in the building that will enable people to get to every floor. The front of the building and the back of the building are offset, so there's actually 7 floors within the building, which is part of the complexity of it. The one place the lift at the back doesn't stop is on the Woolhope floor, which is kind of midway up the front, and that's where a platform lift would provide access to that room instead. And it still is the intention that we come back to deliver a new lift in the foyer as part of that future phase of delivery.
So the revised proposals will allow accessibility to all floors?
Yes, it will, yeah.
Councillor Pebbody?
Roger's just answered my question. Thank you.
Sorry, were you going to ask the same one? Great minds and all that. I do apologise. Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a few questions about governance that will also come up. Naturally, the next item, they're very closely related, aren't they? And it's very timely to be looking at these things now as we're halfway through the supposed year of delivery. So I'm really glad we're looking at it. And who knows when we would have had updates if we hadn't had this meeting, because there's been a very remarkable lack of updates, as Councillor Thomas said. It's also good to be looking at this as we've got a new chief executive and a relatively new director of economy and environment, who I'm sure is really welcoming all this stuff. Councillor Pebbody made a really excellent point about comms, and I think that this, for me, has raised a lot of questions about governance. You know, suddenly there was this email sent to stakeholders last week, which was the first, you know, we'd had about it. But I might ask more about that under the Shire Hall item. I just wanted to ask, you know, looking back over various papers from this administration, there's a lot about inclusivity and participatory decision making and co-production, etc. And this does apply to both places, what has the process been of involving library and museum staff and volunteers about discussions about both projects?
So certainly I've been more involved in the museum project than the Shire Hall project, but certainly the relevant teams have been kind of fully engaged within the council, and actually part of their Heritage Lottery Fund money is being out on the out engaging people now as part of a kind of an activity plan. Damien would be able to tell you the number off the top of his head, but there's quite a high proportion of the total population of the county that have been engaged in one way or another in the design, the offer of the museum, and its future kind of experience. And that's a core part of what Heritage Lottery Fund are funding us to do. Library teams have been fully engaged in each stage of the, I'm sure you'll come on to it, but the library was proposed to go into Mayor Lord Orchards, who were fully engaged in the delivery of that, and the service leads for each of the projects do sit on the internal project boards. Obviously, Damien is the kind of the customer, if you like, for the museum project, and is the joint senior responsible officer for the project with me. And then the library teams have been engaged in the proposals for the library to go into the assembly room. We're obviously working through, which I'm sure we'll come on to, that proposed change in location in the same building from that, and so we're just restarting that engagement process with the teams and the designers looking at that now. But obviously all the pre-work around what is it that the residents of Herefordshire are looking for from a library, what kind of experience do they want, what kind of services do they want, they're all the same regardless as whether it's in the assembly room or whether it's a few feet away in courtroom 2.
I mean, you mentioned it. I'll just come back at the project lead. You mentioned Damien briefly there. Now, I understand Damien's leaving at the end of July. What impact do you think that might have on delivery of the project, if any?
So I've had the pleasure of working very closely with Damien over the last couple of years. He's been a kind of real stalwart for a real driving force behind the project. So we're all kind of sorry to see him go, but it's part of the natural kind of turnover of staffing. I'm sitting on the interview panels along with Damien and Hilary Hall, the corporate director, for Damien's replacement this Friday. We had over 60 applications for the posts, some very strong candidates, and in fact we struggled to get down to the kind of the short list from that. So I'm hoping that, whilst it'll be sad to see Damien go, that we're going to have somebody lined up and in place quite quickly in order to fulfil that role.
Does the committee have any more questions at this stage on the museum? I think once we've worked our way through the different projects, we'll go off camera for some time to talk through our recommendations. But I hope we're all aware of the different. I think I'm keeping some notes as I go through on what I think are potential recommendations around each project. But okay. Is there anything? Sorry, Councillor Swinglehurst. Is there anything you want to add from a political perspective or cabinet perspective on how you feel this project has been? Why we are where we are.
Already really know. I mean, it's, you know, when you're dealing with a complex building, an old, you know, historic complex building, you don't have 100% knowledge when you start. So there is a kind of a process that you have to go through, and I think the For me, the important thing is that we keep very clear-sighted on what is it that we're trying to achieve here, and it's not a cafe, it's a museum and art gallery. And if we have to make decisions, it would be lovely if we had the cafe and the beacon and all the rest of it, but we can't afford it.
No, but
What we
it was
really
part.
need is the museum
Sure.
and the art gallery and that building to be restored and to have a future. So that's the the way we have to prioritise the project, as it were, and and I think just keeping really clear-sighted on the things that really matter versus the things that are nice to have.
I'm sure Cabinet was as shocked as all of us by the budget increase,
It's not,
by the revised
it
costs.
would be lovely to have everything and the bells and the whistles and everything, but actually ultimately you have to cut your suit, and that's but we need to make sure that it is what we need.
Absolutely. I just seem to recall the cafe being an important part of the business model moving forward.
I think the relationship with national museums is more important in terms of footfall.
Thank you. Moving on. Shire Hall. Right, who would like to begin, please? John, do you want to?
I'll talk about Shire Hall for a bit. So, yeah, this came to me about in April, and in a similar set of circumstances, really, that the construction costs were beginning to get a little out of hand, and so I asked the question of the same sort of consultancy arrangement that we had on HMAG, how we could start from the point of view of this is the budget, what can we do for the budget, and could we, instead of looking at a kind of narrowly constrained building, i.e. a corridor with a big room, the assembly room at the end, could we stabilise the whole building for an affordable amount of money and present that as a blank canvas in which we could install a library in one or other of the rooms? So I worked with a firm of quantity surveyors called Gleeds, and we came up with a cost plan that did exactly that. That we thought that within a budget of circa £8 million, we could stabilise the whole building in terms of making it watertight, structurally sound, make the utilities work, make it electrically safe, and meet modern standards in terms of access and so on. And it's a grand old building, it's a fairly obvious thing to say, but so structurally, there's quite a lot there that we should be able to work with, and that's what we discovered, and we're doing more and more surveys, but we're doing more in-depth surveys than we've done before, and we're building confidence in that budget. And then the question rises, what could you do with the building? And it always struck me, my first impression of that building, which is kind of irrelevant, but I did think that the courtroom number 1 had a lot of merit as a thing of history, and in other places they've done things with old courtrooms in terms of experiences of how the justice system worked, settings for court dramas, and so on and so forth. So I thought we should want to preserve that. The assembly room looked like a huge space that to use it as a library was obviously what was in the plan, but that was driving some quite exceptional construction costs because of the height of the ceiling and the need to introduce heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems that had to be mounted in the roof, which meant taking the roof off and rebuilding the roof with all of the problems that entailed. Once you take the roof off a building like that, the lateral walls become potentially a bit wobbly, so they have to be stabilised. And all of a sudden, 4 or 5 million quid is disappearing, and you've not really got anything extra for it. So if we took that away and just said, right, if we stabilised the assembly room and kept that as a big space for doing things, would that be a good thing? There was a bit of an issue about the height of the ceiling as well in terms of it being a library in there. I'm not saying that was a bad scheme, it's just how it struck me. Courtroom number 2 and the ancillary rooms, so the jury rooms and waiting rooms and so on, struck me as a potential library space, and an initial look at that with people who design libraries sort of suggest that could work. So you end up with a building that's immediately doing 3 things. You've got the courtroom and the history associated with that. You've got a general assembly room that could be used for all manner of things, from concerts to displays and so on and so forth. And you've still got your library operating in a series of rooms. So you've got your main public library, you might have your more academic library and one of the jury rooms, and then you might have one that's more friendly from children's point of view. As it happens, yesterday I met with Ian Archer from the Courtyard and went round a number of big spaces that we've got, one in the Town Hall and one in Shire Hall, and they are massively energised by the prospect of that becoming a space available for doing some of the stuff they can't do in Courtyard. So it's not a made-up idea. There appears to be genuine demand for that kind of stuff, as there is for the big open room inside the Town Hall. And so we're going through the process now of thinking about how the library would work in that building, make sure we keep the statutory side of libraries happy, that they are happy with what we could do there, and we improve that. We make that building, Shire Hall, the vista, the portico at the front of it. We give it all the value that it really could have, the full value that it could have to people who come to visit and live in the city. And so from a budget point of view, we're back on track. I think from programme-wise, we know where we're starting from. One of the kind of upsides of where we're at, if I can put it like that, is we now find that HMAG and Shire Hall are broadly at the same point. So if we jointly procured the construction works for both projects and ran one as a satellite from the other, we could probably make quite a significant saving in the budgets that we presented now and start to eat into the £2.6 million gap we've got on HMAG. So I'm seeing an emerging, improving position on both these projects, and I'm thinking that the RAG rating on this should be going more amber now because we can see our way through the trees.
Thanks, John. I realise that you're relatively new to the council, as I was when I sat in this room 3 years ago, and we called in this particular decision to cancel the Maylords project, which was a fully costed project for the library, and move the library instead to Shire Hall. And alongside many of my fellow councillors, we all went and did a guided tour, the same way we did of the library of the Shire Hall, and we were shown again some wonderful drawings and visions for this space and how it was going to be incredible. And it was, we bought in. But the recommendation, some of us did, yes, but one of the recommendations we made as a committee was that the costings at that time for Shire Hall were only desk-based when the full business case was presented. And they had fallen dramatically from the previous year. I think they fell from something like 7.5 million to 3.5 million between the previous administration and when the current administration took over. One of the recommendations we made was that the Maylords Orchard project was kept on hold as a potential solution to the library until the full costings of Shire Hall were known. So I just wonder whether, with the benefit of hindsight, Cabinet feel that would have been that recommendation that we made to Cabinet, whether that was something that Cabinet should have done. Alyssa.
I mean, in my view, to take a broad sweep of this, our library is, for me, is an important thing. It says something. It's about books, about learning, about life of the imagination, creativity. And you have a choice. You can either put it in a building designed by Robert Smirke, who designed the British Museum, probably the best civic building we have in the county. And that says something about what you think about a library, or you can put it in a 1980s shopping centre, which says something different about what you think about a library. And I prefer that you put it in the finest building that you have, because it says something about the importance of knowledge and learning and books and culture. Additionally, that building, the Shire Hall, is already our responsibility. It's our duty to the past and our duty to future generations to look after that building. Whatever has brought us to this point, we are where we are with that building. So a little bit in the same way as the museum, you know, to find a really good use for it, that then also says, well, we will invest, we'll find the money, we will invest, we'll make it a building that's capable of being useful again, instead of just boarded up and shut up and forgotten, which you know, is tragic. It's such a fine building. So I would not unmake that decision
Okay, that's the
or
position of
doubt it
that's the
for a-
position of
for a
cabinet.
second,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay, well, sadly, we have neither at the present time. We don't have a library in Maylords or in Shire Hall, obviously.
Yeah, but
And we have temporary provision.
It'll come. It'll come.
Okay, Councillor Pepperdine.
I think it's lovely to see Shire Hall being brought back and being useful again. But I think its best use was its original purpose as a space for public events, ceremonies and exhibitions. And so I'm really pleased to see that that's back on the table. And that seems to me a much better use of that space. Yeah, thank you.
Just for the record, it was never off the table, and a big part of the business plan for using the Assembly Hall at the back was that it was going to be a multi-purpose space that could host performances. And when I actually said at the time we should be talking to the Courtyard and all of the other arts organisations and seeing how it affected their business models if there was another player in the town. So it's not something new as far as the business plan
No,
is
I
concerned.
understand that. I had real concerns about a multi-use space and how useful that is.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Swinghurst.
So yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think that where we have got to is the right for this building and that space, and having a good performance space or an exhibition space, not, you know, trying to juggle around using it for something else. Actually, let's just put a library in courtroom 2 and let the performance space be what it is.
One of the other major arguments at the time was, and cases for using the room at the Assembly Hall at the back, was disabled access through the Undercroft. And there was some concern that there was no access from the front of the building because of the steps the way they are at the present time. How will we be sorting that with the library in the new space? Sorry, John.
Yeah, I'll just deal with that. So one of the points about that was raised, just picking up on some points, that is we would kind of have to spend the £8 million on this building anyway, because we can't allow it to become derelict. I think that the DDA point, the disability requirements, that the architects who are engaging to do this, they have to design that in. I mean, it's just, you cannot produce a building with public access that doesn't meet the required regulations. So we have to achieve that, and it's been a point that's been raised in a couple of places, in particular stronger towns, about that. So we're on that. And then your point about when I was first asked to speak to Ian Archer and the people from Courtyard, my concern was that they might think that we're taking their business away. It's an abstraction from what they're trying to do. And I was relieved that it was the complete opposite. They can't do everything they want to do in the Courtyard. And so they said there's a real demand for space to do the type of stuff that they'd like to do, but they haven't got the acoustics or the right capacity or whatever. So their enthusiasm has been quite helpful in this new idea of using the building flexibly.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you very much. When the ceiling fell down for the second time, it was pretty clear that we had to do something with that building. For some reason, the previous administration abandoned it. Nothing had happened for 4 years for it. And of course, it starts to deteriorate. Now, much like HS2, big projects like that, you think of a number, I think HS2 was 90 billion to start with. It's now virtually doubled, I think. And the same will happen with our listed buildings. If you want to change the purpose of a listed building to something that will fit the modern era, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it always increases in price. And about wars, I mean, I didn't realise that the Ukraine war was going to cause us financial problems to do our library, but there we are. These things happen, don't they? But it's vital when it comes to the Shire Hall and any of our listed buildings, and we have a number of them in the county, don't we? And we've got to do something with all of them. We only have a limited budget. But I was concerned when this was first proposed, the Shire Hall, fantastic, I thought, a library, activity centre, children learning centres underneath. It was great, it really was, it sounded fantastic. For some reason, we were very anal about the Crown Court. I mean, okay, it's an old part of the building, but the Crown Court don't want it anymore. Why do we need it? People said, oh, we could have films in there. Okay, most films are made on sets with cardboard and they paint them and makes it look like an old building. So we're stuck with this wretched room. Okay, it's very attractive, but what's the point of it? Get rid of it and put the library in there as well as in the courtroom too. And so it goes on, doesn't it? Everyone's got an opinion. It's like road safety, isn't it? Everyone's got an opinion. They all know best. But we have to rely on people who know what they're doing, apparently. But anyway, thank you.
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you. I actually agree with quite a lot of what Councillor Swingles has said, but I do have questions about how, and I'm pleased that we will be retaining a performance space. I never bought into the thing about moving bits of libraries around and retaining into the. But how decisions have been made. I think a lot of questions are raised about that. I think some people are wondering whether decisions were made in haste after the 2023 local elections. As you said, Chair, some experienced councillors were asking questions, warning of potential risks, and these questions were dismissed, and we're now asking them now when a lot of time and money has been wasted. Just on decisions, I couldn't find a thread of decision making about this. It hasn't come to cabinet. There's no record of a cabinet decision. I can't find a record of a published delegated decision. Has there been a decision? For me, these are not. I understand about delegated authority, but these are not sort of where are we going to put the lift or where are we going to put the window. These are huge, to me, political decisions about the city, about the future, about culture, about cultural strategy. So who's made decisions when, and why didn't we know about them?
John or Roger? John, okay.
I think we're in the process of revising designs and proposals that are defined by the budget, and that's the sort of change in our posture, if you like. We're going from a place where we were designing what we wanted and see how much it cost, to our horror to find out it was unaffordable, to saying this is what we can afford, what can we have within that budget. And so we're in that process now, to getting towards the fine end of being able to define what we will get and what the budgets will be and what the programs are, and we will start that process of taking it through the governance and democratic process where everybody will be involved and be able to comment on it. But so for example, we need to get final approvals about whether our library ideas will work in courtroom number 2. We need some ideas from people in conservation and so on about we need to know that what we want to do is going to meet with their approval and so on. So rather than go off half-cocked like we did before, we're just socialising the ideas amongst the stakeholders who are involved in this, with an idea that we will bring it into the rigour of our internal processes in fairly short order.
Diana?
So for both these projects, a decision to reprofile, let's say, them or rescope or whatever again, that's not a decision. It just happens.
Well, I suppose you get to a point where when the budget's you got to such a point where you it's unaffordable. You can either come back to into a governance process and say we've got a problem, and the difference is we're trying to come back and say we had a problem but we've got a solution and it looks like this.
But how is that done? Is that going through cabinet? Is that a private meeting, or just who makes that decision? Is there a paper trail, please?
So, I mean, in terms of we had fairly regular reporting from the people who were advising, providing that sort of construct of services to do with estimating and design and so on. And they made a presentation to us that where it was manifestly too expensive. And so we decided to break our relationship with them and try and go back to, I mean, that's the work that we're doing as officers, to try and produce an affordable scheme so that members can continue to deliver
I understand, John, but are you doing that with cabinet oversight?
Yes.
If that's being discussed, then there's paper trails for how those decisions, or is
Yeah.
it just a telephone call or an email? Or
No, I'm not doing it on my own, no.
I could probably help a little bit in terms of some of the governance history, which we can obviously share. So on the museum project, there are a series of cabinet member decisions. The last one was taken by Councillor Bramer to delegate the spend of the entirety of the budget and any operational decisions to Hilary Hall as the lead cabinet member, and any decision that's been taken around appointments of doing work or professional work or anything else is through records of officer's decision, and they're all published decisions. So we can, in terms of the kind of the governance framework for the museum, we can provide copies of all of those. And there is monthly oversight reporting into cabinet members as to where we are with each of these projects, and discussions with in cabinet briefings about the direction of travel, because the delegated decision on the museum is in consultation with the relevant cabinet members. On the Shire Hall project, so it comes down to kind of the budget, so we're being spent on the project. So there is a decision in terms of the acceptance and spend of the Stronger Towns funding. So the Stronger Towns funding for the Shire Hall project is to fit out the library space. The money that was being spent on the fabric of the building is part of the estates programme. So there's a 3.5 million, I think it is, overall estates programme for working on all of the council estates. There was 4 million in total over a number of years allocated into the Shire Hall project. So again, we can provide you with the governance decision, which was specific to spending that money, where the budget comes from, and it was on the fabric of the building. What we're now talking about doing in terms of meeting the Shire Hall gap is that in the decision that you all took in February to approve the capital programme for the coming year, you also approved something called an historic building fund. That's an allowance in the capital programme to spend up to £5 million on the 3 historic buildings. And in the February decision report that full council approved, that delegated to Rachel Sanders as a Section 151 officer the ability to allocate where that money would be spent, on which building it would be spent on. So the totality of the budget that John's just kind of worked through in terms of those costs, the 8.5 million on the fabric of the building is made up of the money that's already in the capital programme, estates programme for the management of that building, plus the money from the historic building fund, about £4.5 million of that, plus then the external grant funding, which is for the library. And we've been talking to the Stronger Towns Board about the nature of moving the funding from the library in the assembly room into courtroom 2 and the surrounding rooms as an alternative. So the governance is there in terms of where the money comes from and how it's being spent, and the record officer decisions at each stage as we contract money to people to implement it.
Councillor Toynbee? Thank you.
Thank you. There's more I could say about that, but anyway, thank you. Yeah, I think residents were surprised when this statement or press release or email or update or whatever it was came out last week. I'll just say that I think residents were surprised that it was signed by officers and not by the leader or the cabinet member, because they're huge, maybe they're absolutely necessary decisions and we don't have any choice, but I think most people would see them as political decisions, not operational ones. Thank you.
No problem. Councillor Cornthwaite, do you want to come in? Sorry, you've been waiting very patiently.
Yeah, but I'm not too long. I just wanted to thank John for what he's just shared recently. He said, what can we afford when we're looking at projects? And so my question would be, at what point do we make this decision, and who makes this decision? A project is put forward and we have a certain amount of money, no doubt, allocated. So somebody there is making a decision as to what we can afford, and what can we learn from what has happened at the Shire Hall in relation to this?
So I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think we need to re-establish the discipline of quantity surveying within the council, so that we get used to the idea of establishing a budget and then doing cost planning within that budget. I think that's a skill that's not being retained within the council, but I'm doing my best to find some people to do that.
Yep, Councillor Owens.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm surprised that the unsuitability of the Assembly Room as a place for a library wasn't flagged up a lot sooner, given that it was presented as the place that the library was going to be. Now that that's not the case, we're presented with a much downgraded version of a library, and I don't really see how this is any better than what's currently in place in the town hall. So, yeah, I just feel like the residents of the city might have expected to have a much better library for their money. And given that being, and I mean, I would love to see the Shire Hall brought back into use, as Councillor Peabody says, but what we were originally told, and what sort of, along with some of my fellow councillors, I sort of bought into, was the idea that we were going to have this library in the Assembly Room. I'm just, as we are, well, you seem to be going back to the drawing board on this, is it perhaps time to stop and think, is this actually a suitable place for a library, if all we're going to get is a much sort of smaller version, similar to what we already have?
John?
So I think that the amount of money being made available, the Stronger Towns Fund element, is the same amount of money we had before, and the intention is to spend all of that on the library installation, and I think people will still go wow when they see it. Likewise with the HMAG, I think we're not doing half-cocked projects. We're just optimizing the buildings that we've got and using the budgets we've got to produce the same outcome, really, that people will. I think people are happy with okay, putting the loss of the cafe to one side in HMAG. I think the quality of the installation and what people will see will be as advertised, and likewise the library, whilst it might not be in that big assembly room, and people might think the quid pro quo of having a library in courtroom number 2 and some of the ancillary rooms and having the assembly room as well is quite a good outcome. But the quality of the installation will be as we set out on day one.
What's the difference in floor space between the two?
It depends how you add it up. You can have as much space as you had in the assembly room using a collection of the rooms, courtroom number 2 and I think 2 of the other rooms, and some of them, if you use some of the corridor for the reception point, you can have as much space as there was in the assembly room.
Okay, Councillor Peabody. Thank you.
Given that the 2 red rag projects are principally about underestimating building costs, is there a particular recommendation that you would want this committee to make about assessing those initial costs through quantity surveying and stuff like that? Is that something that's done externally? Should it be done in-house?
If you said that, it would be consistent with things that are being said internally.
We can say anything that will help reinforce that. What would it be?
The council should consider whether it has adequate quantity surveying resource.
Thank you.
For example.
And did it used to have that in-house? Is that something that we've lost?
I think a lot of authorities have let it ebb away. So back in the day, when I used to encounter public sector quantity surveyors, they used to be rigidly, they were quite a difficult opponent if you were on the contracting side. There were GC works form of contracts that there were dedicated forms of contract for procuring public works, and the QSs had the same attitude. And so there are certain things that have happened in construction procurement that have lost that discipline, and we need to re-establish that, I think, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, Councillor Owens.
Thank you. I just wanted to check as well. You mentioned that you're talking to Stronger Towns about the changes that are happening. How do they feel about that?
Well, I think they understandably they're nervous, and part of my job at the moment is to re-establish their confidence in our ability to deliver these projects, and so we're in the process of doing that. And in September, we'll be taking some presentations that hopefully we'll share with members as well about how the designs are developing and what these schemes should look like, and we'll be reinforcing the budget control and the program control as well. So I think that's an improving situation.
Have Stronger Towns publicly said how they feel about these changes? Are we aware as yet?
Well, there are mixed views, I think. I mean, I wouldn't want to speculate.
As a board, no. They haven't.
Well, I mean, I went and presented to them. Well, you did as well, about a week and a half ago, and after a bit of sort of quite challenging questioning, I think that they were had an increasing level of confidence in our ability to deliver these schemes.
Okay. I think the opinion of Stronger Towns would probably be valuable. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the committee on this at this stage? And we'll move on to the next item. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Durkin, you're shooting. Okay. Thank you for coming. We'll move on to Home Lacey. Sorry.
Sorry, just a quick. I've just seen that there was an article in the Independent.
I know. I saw. Yeah.
And Stronger Hereford did comment in that, and, and Abigail Appleton did.
That's right. Okay, there was a public comment. Thank you for that. Yeah, it did make the nationals, didn't it, recently? Which is okay. Home Lacey Road. Got? Yeah. Okay.
Last but not least, Home Lacey Road. So I'll just give a little bit of history on the project. Really important project for us. One of our big levelling up funded projects. It's about connecting the all-important Rotherwas employment site to the city centre, and it also ties in very well with the delivery of phase one of the bypass, because it's about improving the traffic on Home Lacey Road, which right now is quite a rat run. So it's about improving some of the safety issues that we've got on Home Lacey Road, and in particular making it safer for active travel, putting in cycle facilities along the length of the road, as well as resurfacing this road, as well as complete redesign of one of the roundabouts, which is where we've had a number of safety incidents. So it's quite a wide-ranging scheme. It's been a scheme that's been challenging to deliver because it is one of our traffic-sensitive pieces of network, because it carries such a large amount of traffic. So doing any work on that road, it was always going to cause lots of disruption. I'm quite proud to say that I think that the team have tackled that quite well. They've been able to be flexible and deal with issues as they've come up on site. Early on in the scheme, one of the people you remember, because it was a headline in the Times, there was a water main that was hit. The water main was not supposed to be there, and it was only just below the surface. Surprise, surprise. So, but they dealt with all of that rather exceptionally well. The scheme's had some challenges. Financially, we had to go back and rethink the traffic management. So the original tender came in with some traffic management that proposed lots of road closures and a one-way working system. We had to go back and say, no, that's not going to work for us, and would have caused too much disruption in Hereford. So that has delayed the scheme. So instead of having a December finish this year, it has pushed it into next year. But the scheme is going well. Over more than 40% complete now. Phases 1 and 2 just coming to their. So we've to deal with that traffic management issue, we've designed the scheme to be delivered in phases, and the phases have been spread apart from each other so that there's sufficient distance between the two, so that traffic doesn't get snarled up in one long queue, but is spread over the length of the scheme. So the phases 3 and 4 are left to deliver. Touch wood, we're doing okay on the budget. And I'm hoping that again it'll be another one of those schemes that we can point to say it's been delivered under budget.
Great. Do you want to touch on the key risks and issues?
Yeah, so the key risks, as I said, was the traffic management concerns, and how that was going to impact on the whole of Hereford, and tying up traffic and creating longer delays. Um, and then I suppose one of the other elements of the project has been the improvements at the railway bridge, and we've had to deal with a number of queries because I think when you go out to consultation and you talk to people about what you're delivering, they look at it and see it, but it's not until they start seeing it on the ground that it really starts to have impact. And so some of the things like some of the narrowing of the roads to create that traffic calming and to make the space for active travel, that's been a surprise to some residents. And some of the changes proposed for the railway bridge has come as a surprise. So we've been dealing with lots of inquiries as we've been going on delivering this.
Do you feel that the residents have been kept properly informed over the
Yeah,
appeal
this
that's been
one of the
filtered?
things we installed with this project, as we've done with almost all of the LUF projects, has been regular stakeholder updates. So I think every 2 weeks we do a sheet out with pictures of what's been going on the site. That gets mailed out to a stakeholder list. Stakeholder list has gotten longer as the scheme's gone on because more people have inquired about it. Very good set of web pages that the comms team has set up, so there's information about the scheme that's readily available to residents.
Thank you. Frank, do you want to come in?
There was a similar question to yours, really, Ed. If we were looking at Hereford Voice, which I try not to, a lot of the residents don't seem to know why we're doing it, and I just wondered, how do we really get them informed that we're narrowing the road for a purpose and not to improve that road for what it was, but rather to what it is. And the big question is, people are not seeing it. They're thinking we're improving it for what was happening down there, rather than that it's going to function for the businesses that are down there, which is quite clear if people look at it. But how do we get people engaged with realizing that, yes, it's going to look very different, but they're going to have to get used to it? I think that was my point with Scott, please.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with your question. I think we did all the nice consultation, the artist design bits when we did the consultation some time ago. But as I said, when residents start to see it on the ground, that's when they start to realize the changes that are coming. I think our website does a very good job of explaining why the scheme has the elements that it has in it, and again, we've had to deal with quite a few inquiries and press inquiries on it. We are going to we're just coming up to a point where we're going to put something new on the website, which is we commissioned a micro simulation from the modeling data because this issue of traffic lights along the route, introducing traffic lights along the route, and how if traffic stayed the same as it was now, there'd be concerns about queues and journey times along the route. And the micro simulation has produced a video which we're going to put onto the website, which actually shows how traffic is designed to flow through the length of the road, and journey times are not going to increase even though we're putting in additional traffic signals on the route. So I think it's the answer to your question is we just got to have continual engagement to keep people informed.
You do mention there's a potential underspend. Do you know how much the potential underspend is forecast to be at this time?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to say at this moment, so I wouldn't want to commit.
I was after a good news story there, Scott.
Sorry, no.
No? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Owens.
Thank you, Chair. On that note, actually, if there is going to be some spare money to spend on the commercial road project, does that mean it'll be include things like the cycle provision that was originally meant to be part of it, which I think was removed?
Yeah, no, the commercial road scheme that we are developing includes cycle provision along the length of the road, as well as the commercial road scheme has been delayed for two reasons. One, we couldn't have everything going on the network all at the same time. So we didn't feel it was good to have that scheme going as well as the Home Lacey scheme in the same year. So we've pushed, and it's got to be done during the summer months. So we've pushed the commercial road scheme into 2027. And the second reason is because we wanted to have the outcome of what happens with parking in the city centre, because the commercial road is going to be quite critical to that. To whatever design we have, it needs to fit with whatever additional parking may or may not happen on that commercial road stretch, as well as the tie into the Elston Hill scheme, which is still on the books as well to be done. And you mentioned about funding coming over to be pushed into commercial road. The LUF funding, what we've done is we've got a number of LUF projects. We've set those out into a program. We're delivering them as we go, and wherever we make savings on one project, we can then try to move the money forward into the other projects so that the other projects can continue to be delivered.
Sorry, just to be clear, so would that include potentially cycle infrastructure all the way up to the junction with the ring road, to the Kerry?
The vision we have is to build a scheme on commercial road that ties the transport hub into the city centre, as well as any scheme we deliver on Elston Hill in the future, tying those schools, the transport hub, and the city centre together with active travel. That's the key vision for it.
Any other questions? No? Yep, okay, sorry, Councillor Baker. I do apologise, how could I?
Indeed. I've been struggling with this particular item because I don't know anything about it. I've been down there a couple of times to recent briefings we had about the new M Group taking over from Balfour Beatties, and I thought, well, this is horrible down here. I don't want to come down here again. What on earth are they doing there? And I've been struggling to try and come up with some challenging questions for you, and I can't think of anything. But only because of lack of information. So a bit more information. It's a lovely, colourful item on the computer screen, but it doesn't tell me much. So
Could somebody send Councillor Baker the planned design?
I think this video you've got, I'd love to see that as to what it might look like in the future.
Councillor Thomas?
That would be really quite useful.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
I'm afraid to say I haven't run across one single person who thinks Home Lacey Road will be an improvement. I sincerely hope it will, but I really do doubt that, that narrowing the road for the sake of good cycle lanes seem to be on both sides of the road. Well, it could quite easily be on one side of the road to make the road sort of, correct width and restricting. And when you come to the bridge, if we're going to have traffic lights, I don't know, often you go down there at sort of 4:30 at night or 8:30 in the morning, but the queue at present or before you started work could stretch from the business park all the way to Ross Road, and it could take you 10 minutes to get from the park to Ross Road. And I can't see anything that you're doing there is going to make it any quicker or better, except for people on bikes, of course.
If you want, Scott, yeah?
Yeah, I'd strongly encourage you to have a look at the website, which explains all of this. The narrowing of the road is in a place where the road is already very narrow and there isn't a cycle lane there. So it is about putting one cycle in, not cycling on both sides of the road. You have to remember as well that the opening of the bypass will reduce traffic on Home Lacey Road. So Home Lacey Road in the future will be different than it is now. And the idea is to not make it an attractive road for rat running, but it is a residential road, and more importantly, the connectivity between Rotherwas and the city centre is hugely important. There's a huge amount of cycling that actually happens on that road, whereas our normal commute to work cycling in a rural authority is around 2 or 3% of work journeys. On Home Lacey Road, it's about 14% because of that connectivity to Rotherwas. So providing for cyclists on that road is still very important. We haven't narrowed the road beyond standards, so the road widths have remained at the standards required for normal road for vehicles to pass. So it's not narrowing it to single lane. It is only a narrowing to enough to provide the space needed to put the cycle provision in place.
But the chances are at the present time, there's a £4 million funding gap on the overall project. Is that according to your figures?
No, there's not a 4 million funding gap. We're
Forecast cost. Okay, so you said that the construction costs could complete further grants. Sorry, what is the funding gap that you're forecasting on this one?
there isn't a funding gap. We're expecting to underspend on Home Lacey Road.
Okay, councillor, rewind and take all of that back. I do apologise. It's been a long meeting so far. Any more questions on this? No? Okay, I'm going to suggest we take a 15-minute break in order, just a quick comfort break, and then sit down and work out our recommendations. Councillor Price, do you want to come in?
I did just wonder the point of my being here, actually. We're 2.5 hours into this meeting. Yeah, so on this subject, I spent a couple hours one morning about 3 months ago, 5:30 in the morning at Rotherhurst, to just see for myself as to whether or not we needed active travel measures into Rotherhurst at a time of day when people actually go to work. And I monitored 1,015, between 1,000 and 1,100 movements of traffic, whether it was walking, cycling, buses. Actually, it was only 2 buses in that period of time, and cars and vans and lorries. 15% of it arrived on foot or by bicycle. And that was between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning. It was a Monday morning, first day of the week, pouring with rain. And that gave me at least a momentum of get up and go to make this happen. So when we have, and it's been mentioned in this meeting before, and it never resonates, because an administration is 4 years long. You take up the previous administration's ideals, and you try to deliver it if it's funded and it's in the right place. The Levelling Up Fund, for all of the projects for active travel measures, were born and bred in the previous administration, of which we have tried to deliver. When I first heard the costing of the Home Lacey Road scheme, I was quite horrified. And the reality of it is, through constant monitoring, and I will say the name of one person here, Sam Nadir, who is the project engineer of this. He has kept me informed of everything through the officers to a degree I've never had an officer before. Over probably 3 years, he's kept me informed on lots of these schemes. And he has said, Councillor Price, we need to look at this if we're going to cost save this. We need to do that if we're going to do something else. But the reality of it is, we're in a place at any particular day and we're delivering a project, and we're in a place at this moment in time where every single project is doubling and tripling in cost, which has been mentioned before. So this scheme, Scott mentioned it, we're building phase 1, or hopefully to be giving the decision to go ahead in September for phase 1 of the bypass. That doesn't have its own active travel measures built into it, which in the new compliancy for any new scheme you're going forward to, you would need it. But in this context, the Home Lacey Road scheme will deliver us the active travel measures that's needed for Hereford, as well as giving us the ability to make travel better. So it won't be an issue of going all the way up Home Lacey Road to get to the A49 out of there. This road will start to become the place where you will do your active travel, your walking, your cycling, the buses, etc. If you are choosing to want to go somewhere by car, you will get round and use the bypass, and that's where you will go eventually. And we've got to stop thinking entirely about today and yesterday. We've got to think 50 years ahead, and we do not do that. And the one thing I have heard in this meeting today, and I've listened to everything you've said, was when John said about our inability to be able to do QS well. Every project that you're examining here has failed to give us the cost of what it would cost to deliver a few years down the road. I know there's other things that's happening, and it will always happen that you'll get inflation, but the inflationary pressures on this has been bad, coupled with the inability to conjure up a scheme and then not know the impact of what you need to do to get that to delivery. This administration, from my perspective, has been difficulty because we have encountered, you said yourself, Chairman, there was a ta-da moment when we're going to have it.
Well, guess what? You started in the wrong place because you were never going to be able to get that to that moment from the project as it was first designed, because it wasn't costed well enough. And I would just like to take back on another comment that you made about male or daughters being fully costed. It might have been fully costed at some point in time, but when you get towards delivery, it wouldn't have been fully costed because the cost would have had exactly the same pressures as every other project. So on this point, I would say I was never a lover of the cycleway Home Lacey Road scheme. I've taken it on board to try to deliver it, and I've taken it on board with making sure that each of those projects come in under budget, that we can roll over the budget from that into the next one, which takes up Councillor Owen's point that Commercial Road, which I've been involved with looking at with Sam and officers for 2 years, I suspect, something like that, as to what that might look like to be able to join the transport hub to the city centre. It's had various iterations, but it does need the money saved from Home Lacey Road to make it happen next year. So, you know, all of the points, I'm glad you're interpreting it all. I'm trying to put a little bit of focus on the
I think it's
reality of where we
very,
got
very,
to.
very useful. And
So thank
again,
you.
it's good that it's coming in under budget, which is great. Thank you all for your time today. We're going to go into sort of, we could stop the live feed now. We'll restart again at 20 to 5, 15 minutes. Thank you. Apologies to those of you if you were waiting at home and we've gone a bit longer than we expected to. We have, however, now come out with some conclusions or observations, and I'll now ask the scrutiny officer to read out our recommendations from this meeting today.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations proposed by the committee are as follows. 1. That the Executive reviews the Council's current arrangements for developing cost estimates for major capital projects before projects proceed to approval stages. 2. That the Council explores the provision of a marshal to manage bus manoeuvres in the transport hub. 3. That the Council consider an incubation hub as part of the development of Phase 2 of Ross Business Park. And 4. That the Council provide more regular public updates on the progress on the revised redevelopments of Shire Hall and Hereford Museum and Art Gallery.
Thank you. I think that covers the items that we discussed. If we could move briefly on to the work programme. Oh, of course, sorry. Can we take a vote, please? Do I have a proposer for those four? Councillor Baker, a seconder. Councillor Toynbee, all those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. That's carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Pebble is making apologies. Thank you very much for coming. Can we look at the work programme, please? Well, we are looking at, I guess we know what our next meeting is, which is only next week. We can defer this to our next meeting, which is only the week after next, to look at the work programme. And then we can just agree that our next meeting is Monday the 20th of July at 10 a.m. Are we happy with that? Yes, okay, so we'll look at the work programme in more detail at that meeting. It's only just over a week away. Thank you all very much for your time today. It's been a long one. Thanks, guys. Thank you.